Of the world, 12.5% is habitable land. When I discovered this, I couldn't believe it. I had to check my math 3 times before believing how little space we have. And though we don't realize it, we have to share this 12.5% with 7.8 billion people. Now, if you have a sibling, you know the way to share is to break the cookie into 2 exact halves, because you don't want them getting more than you, and vice versa. So, if we treated what land we have the same way, to share between 7.8 billion siblings of 16 billion acres of land, to share between this many people, we would each get 2 acres of land to live on. 2 acres is a square 90 meters by 90 meters, and that's about 1/10 of a kilometer each way. This would be each person's entire land to live on and stay on their whole lives. So imagine you're in a box, rounding up 100 meters by 100 meters, and up until breathable air stops, which is about 6 kilometers. Any waste, carbon, plastic, food you have ever and will ever produce remains within the box. There is no leaving the box. As well as your inability to leave the box, the oxygen you have is all the air you have. It can't leave either. You can have plants to convert any carbon you exhale and produce back into breathable air, but all carbon you emit will remain in your box until regenerated back into oxygen. Of the air you have, which is about 6 billion cubic meters, it only takes half of 1% of that air to be filled with carbon for you to begin to asphyxiate and die. So, have you ever been on a plane? How about 10? 20? More? Well, 6.5 is the average number of flights taken by the average Westerner per year. With each person's cap amount of carbon weighing 550 tons, and an average flight emitting 3.6 tons of carbon, flying the average 6.5 times a year means that if you, for example, started flying at age 3, like I did, you wouldn't live to turn 23. This is assuming the only carbon you ever emitted was from flying. No breathing, no cars or motorbikes, no transportation of goods, and no manufacturing of products. And still, you wouldn't make it to 23. And also, please note that in this scenario, I am not accounting for animals' space or the carbon that they produce. Because I'm trying to show you the best possible scenario. And very sadly, this is the best it gets. Though unrealistic, the best case. To die before the age of 23. As someone who travels a lot, realizing this terrified me, so I needed to do something about it. I am someone who is very conscious of my effect on the world. My family and I became very aware of our economical and environmental impact. At age 12, I became vegetarian and took public transit as almost my only form of transportation. At 13, my family got an electric car. We stopped buying imported foods, clothing, and goods, and started to refuse disposable packaging of any sort. At age 14, I became vegan and stopped buying anything that wasn't secondhand. We began to buy only food from within the country as well as nothing made from harmful materials. And only fruit known as seconds, which are the fruit that grocery stores are going to throw away because they are bruised or look unappealing to the average customer. In 2015, my family opened Vancouver's first zero-waste, vegan, non-profit community cafe, which I worked at ages 12 through 15. This cafe provided healthy, sustainable, affordable food, as well as support, awareness, and a voice for our community. We catered, held comedy nights and movie nights, hosted workshops and clubs and meetings, and had our famous community dinners, where once a month we would host a huge vegan dinner completely free of charge for anyone in our community. My family and I have created a lifestyle in which we put the environment and our community first. We moved to Bali to find what more we could do. Since we have been here, we have bought not only within the country, but within Badung, which is where we live. We live on a farm in the rice fields. We don't have hot water or air conditioning. We travel only by foot or electric motorbike. And through all of this, I would assume that I cut my consumption in half. I came to the Green School because I want to make a greater impact, to have the opportunity to stand up for my values and have a voice. But being here has shown me the irony and hypocrisy of our school. The greenest school in the world is one majority of you got to by plane, and one that most of your parents have to fly on visa runs every 60 days to be at, and one you all want to run away to holiday from every time there's a break. And hey, I'm not coming up here all high and mighty. In my junior year, I flew back to Canada 4 times, with a total of being on 16 planes in 1 year. Terrifying. So I stopped. Everything I was doing to make my impact a good one was vetoed by my incessant flying. So August of 2019, I stopped flying. And I decided to prove that there is a better way to live and a better way to travel. So, instead of using my winter break to fly on holiday, I began my mission for a longer life. I went to work on a farm in Thailand, regenerating my carbon back into oxygen by growing plants and food. That meant no need for importing food. We could live off the crops in our garden, just like we do here at my home. But flying to Thailand to clean up my carbon would be redundant. And so, I went on a 7-day trip across 4 countries by bus, train, ship, and ferry. I left Bali on a bus headed for Jawa. We crossed over on a ferry and got off the bus in Surabaya, and then onto a train that took us to Jakarta. From there, we got onto a 2-day boat crossing to Batam. Finally, that morning, we left Indonesia on a ferry going to Singapore. We got onto a long bus, destination Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where we had to stay the night because our bus had gotten in late and we missed our train. The next morning at 6 a.m., I got lost on my way to the bus station, but made it just in time to get on a 7-hour bus ride to the border of Malaysia and Thailand. We crossed the border by foot, and though there were not many others there, the process took a lot longer than we anticipated, and we had 10 minutes until our next train left. We had no money for a ride to the station, so began running with these enormous hiking bags, making it on the overnight train to Bangkok. After, thankfully, a calm day exploring the streets of Bangkok, we got back onto another overnight train to Chiang Mai, where I was picked up by my hosts for the next 3 weeks. And then we returned the same way, again taking 7 full days of travel. Most people would argue that they don't want to put the effort in. I was in Thailand for 3 weeks. I was traveling for almost as long as I was there. But the thing about these magical teleportation devices we call planes is that you have missed out on experiencing every culture of the countries you pass over. You miss out on the scenery, the food, the people. Every day of travel, I learned more about the countries I was in. And I gained a huge appreciation for slow travel. I'm a blink and you'll miss it kind of person. And I would not want to miss out on getting to explore so many places and making so many new memories, so that I could sit for a few hours in a chair and be teleported. Ease comes at a price, and when that price is experience, I don't know if it's worth it. Life is short and getting shorter. Experience as many things as you can while you still can. But to bring this back to environmentalism, some of you may be thinking that a 3-hour plane trip would emit less carbon than a week straight of travel. And you'd be wrong. It boggles my mind that for a few hours of easy travel, it puts more carbon into the world than 7 full days of travel. A flight from Bali to Chiang Mai emits 1 ton of carbon, which doesn't sound too bad, right? For a couple hours of flying. Well, for almost 200 hours of land and sea travel, I only emitted 0.42 tons of carbon, which is less than half the emissions for over 50 times the amount of time spent traveling. It wasn't hard. It just took a long time, and it taught me how precious travel is, and how much we miss when we're 35,000 feet above it all. I will continue to manage my carbon output carefully, and keep my box as clean as it can be. But even if I am doing my all to stop this wasteful behavior that has been so sadly normalized, my box, which I have taken responsibility for and cleaned, doesn't actually exist. We all share our air. And unless we each act responsible for our own boxes, my effort to care for my air means very little, as everybody else who is flying is putting carbon into the air that every living being on this planet has to breathe. We are in a box, and that box is all the air we have. And when we reach the point where 0.5% of our air is carbon, every single one of us pays. So if you had to take responsibility for your box and for everything you produce and consume, everything you breathe, eat, and drink, you would live differently, wouldn't you? If you had to pile all of your waste right in front of you, so you had to see all that you consume instead of it disappearing into a black garbage bag, you would change your habits, wouldn't you? If I continued living how I used to, and I was in this box, I wouldn't be alive today. It's easy to think there is more land and more air somewhere else that can take my waste and my carbon. But the problem is that in this place you're telling yourself it's disappearing to, there are people who are thinking and doing the same thing. If everybody pollutes someone else's space that isn't theirs, then everybody's space is polluted, just at different rates. You don't have the right to more space than anyone else does. But there are people who believe that they deserve more, and that they matter more than others. And they push people out of their spaces. They don't know that they are killing people by pumping their carbon elsewhere or throwing their waste elsewhere. But their actions have repercussions. By sinking countries, burning forests, and starving cities. Which is easy to blame on someone else or something else, or nature just being nature. Luckily, not everyone is like this. When placed in their box, they don't take their problems and save themselves by putting someone else at risk. Without these people, we would already be dead. I don't know how many of you have taken the One Planet Living Footprint Calculator test. Here's the website if you haven't. But it tells you how many Earths humanity would need to keep up with the amount we take from ours. And statistically, if you're a Westerner, you will get over one Earth. And that means we've lost. But it's not just some game on some website. If everyone was like me a year ago, we would all not exist. We would be dead. And that's a pretty big deal. But like I said, not everyone is like this. And they are the only reason you are alive right now. And that does not mean that you can continue on because these people are going to keep cleaning up our messes and trying the best they can to balance the scales. We need to stop taking advantage of the people who are contributing least to waste pollution because they're barely surviving because we have dumped all of our waste on these people. I'm not telling you that you are awful people. I'm trying to show you that I took responsibility for my box. I said I'm not going to use more than my share, and I made sure I wasn't dumping any more of my waste onto other real, living, breathing people. And this is within everybody's capability. Everybody has the ability to live within their own box. And now that I have made the adjustments to my life that keep my metaphorical box clean, I'm not done. Again, my box does not actually exist, and I share my air with everyone. So to help others get started on cleaning their boxes, I'm working with my parents and the farmers around my area to grow a small forest of 500 trees on our farm. This will be a trustworthy and accurate offsetting program. There will be a website where you can put in where your flight is departing from and where it's headed. And we will tell you how much carbon that is, and how many trees you would have to rent for how many days in order to offset the amount of carbon you are creating. Participating in this project will be an easy first step to cleaning your box. I encourage you to look into slow travel and into using less packaging and imported goods, and become more conscious of what you are throwing into your own box. Be conscious, be responsible, and think inside the box.